Joe Biden turns his sights on people who got PPP loans who are criticizing his giveaway to buy votes for the midterms. And, well, there's actually a little bit of a question as to whether or not what's legal and what wasn't legal, and what was constitutional and what wasn't constitutional, especially given the fact that the PPP was legislatively funded and fueled, not by executive order. So we'll talk about that and what that means and where we go from there. In other news, the ACLU is suing Arizona, and I've read this article a couple times in a couple different sources, and both times I've realized that I actually have to defend the ACLU on this one, and I can't believe I just had to say those words, but we'll talk about that, what this means, and where we go. The Ashley Biden diary keepers have pled guilty to stealing material, and it leads us to wonder, would this be an issue with any other person who is in a halfway house or a rehab facility? I mean, keeping diaries is usually pretty common in there, and I have to imagine they get stolen all the time, but we'll talk a bit about that. And it appears the media narrative has turned, and now it looks like the media has their sights set on the Donald for exerting pressure on the FDA for the COVID-19 emergency use authorizations for the vaccines. Which tells me, are we going to be having, are we going to be turning on the jab here in a little bit? I should probably not say vaccine, even though it's not against YouTube rules anymore, but it is going to be all this and more. Welcome back to the main channel. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning, Edheads. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar. We have got a bunch of stuff to go over here today. It's another one. I've been noticing a lot lately that the news days are getting intermittently and sporadically a little bit lighter, and some of this is stuff that I've not covered because it's civil stuff and it's, you know, celebrity gossip and things like that. I didn't want to go into the Alex Jones stuff just because of the celebrity gossip aspect over it, because really he is more of a celebrity in our circles than anything else. But I know that that's been left off because, hey, they're trying to wrest control of InfoWars away from Alex Jones so he can't go and hide money in there anymore, because he's saying he's bankrupt and he can't go off and pay them, which, I mean, that's the goal that they're trying to do, is to bankrupt him. I don't think they're trying to get money off him. They're trying to shut him up. But that is off for now. But we do have a bunch of stuff to go over, a bunch of stuff to talk about, and a bunch of things that are going up. The Paycheck Protection Loan Program, that's a nice touch. But again, it's an apples to oranges thing because, and we'll talk about this, that was something that was brought forward by the legislature. That wasn't an executive order thing. It was a bunch of people got together and say, hey, let's go give a bunch of money to these companies as a loan, but hey, if they do this and this and this and follow our rules, we'll call it a grant. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about a bunch of other stuff over here on Contemporary. Make sure you guys go check out the Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys, Mr. Behavior, the No Gimmicks podcast, KTZed, coming up this weekend with another true crime podcast. So we'll be talking about that. Go check out Tweets by Brit and a slew of other people. PJ Patriot. KTZed was on PJ Patriot last night, but I was working on some things and I was not able to get to it. That's on my list for today, for later on today. But yeah, go check out all of that great programming. It's going to be an awesome time. These are great people, and they all share the common goal of trying to get news and culture from the common man for the common man. So definitely go and check all of them out. It's going to be an awesome time. And let's get into the finance for the morning here. It's looking here like we might be seeing some honking on the markets here. The Dow was up over 300 points throughout the day yesterday, 233, 291.78. And it looks like they dropped right off the beginning like we saw was going to happen with the futures, and then jumped back up and dropped back off and then just shot back up towards the end again. So I always, when I see something big like this happen on a day where it doesn't look like stocks are doing well, or as things are unstable, as Jerome Powell comes back and tries to tell us that he's going to go shut everything down once again, shut it down because, well, let's not say that on YouTube. If Midget B is here, he knows what I'm about to say. Shut it down! They know! A certain group whose name you can't say on YouTube. But we're seeing things up. It looks like the futures are coming down for the day. So we'll see where this starts off from, where we go with that. Looking in at Bitcoin. We're at the 5-day on the Bitcoin, which is down 332 US dollars and 30 US cents. Coming out from its high back on the 22nd, but looking in at where we go with that, we've seen a little bit of a roller coaster off of that, but we've seen a very sharp drop off in today. We'll actually back this back out. And throughout the day yet, we've seen this sharp drop off, but in the past couple hours while I've been setting this out, we've seen another big spike coming off of this. So we get a refresh off this so we can get our actual numbers. The spike has brought us, it's still down from the previous close, but only $57.30 down to $21,503.30 is where our Bitcoin is currently sitting at right now. So it's not dumping off value. If it's something that you've chosen to invest in, then you're doing okay. You're not doing really well. You're not doing really poorly, but you're kind of sitting there in the middle right now. So we'll continue to watch this and see what's happening with this. Your fuel prices continue to actually drop across the Madison area, which means that before we get our next crop of fuel data, and I'm actually going to fill the truck, because that gives me 6 weeks to figure out what's going to happen with this. 322 is your low price leader at the Shell in Lodi. That is far away from the Madison proper area, but we are down back below the 330 mark once again in the Madison proper area. 328 at both Quick Trips, also 328 at the one in Sun Prairie. The Woodman's on Gammon is at 329. The Fleet Farm into Forest is also at 329, and nothing on the chart today is above 330. However, it's still above 330 here, so plan accordingly. This may be a reflection on what your gas prices are locally for you, but again, it's real world numbers. We're not looking at the AAA average across the country. We're looking at trends in a specific area and trying to apply them out to the rest of the country. So that's what we see coming off of that. Let's see what IBD has to say for the morning. Dow futures fall ahead of key inflation data. Powell's speech up next. From Scott Latonin. Dow futures fell Friday morning ahead of a key inflation reading, the Commerce Department's PCE index. Later Friday, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell will speak at 10 a.m. Eastern from Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Gap, Marvel, Ulta Beauty, and Workday are all key earnings movers on Friday. The Gap shares rose 6%, Marvel stock slid 4%, Ulta Beauty shares rallied almost 4%, while Workday jumped 11%. Electronic Arts, EA Sports, it's in the game. surged 14% following new reports from Amazon plans to buy the video game maker. EV leader Tesla traded down 0.5% on Friday. Elsewhere, Dow leaders Apple and Microsoft were lower ahead of today's stock market open. This is important, by the way, with EA. It's a video game maker, obviously, and it's one of the things. It's another thing that's being gobbled up by the Amazon conglomerate to try to control all of your media, and again, you will own nothing and you will like it. It's one of the reasons that I started, when I start recommending things out at the top of the show, started talking about Mr. Behavior, because he is in video game design as well, and I'd like to have, for people to have the option. I know, like, Daily Wire's getting into movies and TV. Timcast is trying to get into TV. And one of the things that I want to pick up with on top of news and culture podcast is getting into video games and, movies and TV as well, if we can find the talent to do that. But getting into video games and music, because I've got wonderful musicians. Both Behavior and Stephen Ignoramus are amazing musicians. Stephen himself being a full studio musician, and I don't know if Behavior has been in the studio since his Hard Mode album came out, but he's also done studio music as well. I'd like to sign both of them to a label that we come back up off of this, but it's, it's baby steps. We still have to get the website launched. But also, Behavior himself is incredible in the video game sphere, so I want to see if we can't make that flourish and get an alternative to your big studios like this that are getting bought up increasingly by places like Amazon. So that's what we see coming out of that. In current stock market pullback, Arista Networks, Axcelis Technologies, Costco, and Global Foundries, as well as Dow Jones stocks Amgen and McDonald's, are among the top stocks to buy and watch. Global Foundries is a new IBD swing trader stock, while Costco stock was added to the IBD leaderboard in the wake of last week's breakout move. Arista and Axcelis were featured in this week's Stocks Near a Buy Zone column. On the futures, early Friday, Dow futures slipped 0.2 versus fair value, while the S&P traded down 0.3 and the Nasdaq declined 0.4 in morning trade. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. Among ETFs, the Nasdaq Invesco QQQ Trust moved down 0.4. The SPDR S&P 500 ETF was down 0.25 in early morning trade. The 10-year yield ticked higher to 3.07, still with no GDP to back it up, by the way. Early Friday, following Thursday's fall to 3.02%, this week the 10-year yield is above the 3% level for the first time since July of 2021. U.S. oil prices are on pace for solid gains this week after losses last week saw West Texas Intermediate futures reach their lowest level since January. WTI futures rose more than 1% early Friday, trading near $94 a barrel. Dude, we need to see this back down to $30 a barrel. What are we doing? Drill, baby, drill. But that's what's coming off the futures. And remember, overnight action doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. Let's talk a bit about yesterday's numbers, and then we'll talk about student loans, because that's pretty much all anyone can talk about today. From CNBC, Dow closes 300 points higher, extends rally to second day ahead of Powell's Jackson Hole speech. From Sarah Min, the Dow Industrial Average jumped Thursday, extending a two-day rally ahead of Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell's Jackson Hole speech. The Dow spiked 322.55, or just less than 1%, to 33,291.78, with gains accelerating in the final hour of trading. The S&P jumped 1.41% to 41,99.12, and the Nasdaq advanced 1.67% to 12,639.27. Still, the major averages are on pace for a losing week. The Dow was down 1.23 through Thursday. The S&P is 0.69% lower, and the Nasdaq is down a little bit over 0.5%. Materials, communication services, and information tech outperformed in the S&P. Consumer staples and utilities underperformed the broader market index. Snowflake jumped 23.1% after posting a beat on revenue. Shares of Peloton dropped 18.3% after the equipment maker reported an earnings miss because, hey, people are going to the gym now and being somewhat social. If I can ever get this crap out of my lungs from the last couple packs of cigarettes I smoked, I'd be back there too. I enjoy going to the gym. Although, I will say, with the weather being just in that perfect balance, it's actually been a little bit more fun to go on hikes and be outdoors than to be in the middle of a stuffy gym, seeing muted CNN on a TV across from me and listening to the StarCraft World Finals, which is what I typically do while I'm on the elliptical. I do, now that I have the watch that has the timer on it and don't have to be pulling out my phone to do a timer, I do want to spend some more time with the bag. I definitely want to do some of that. See if that thing can kick my butt. But I gotta look over and see what some of the workouts are for that. I know from some of the ones that I've seen they are timed. If anybody has any recommendations, drop me a line over on Discord or DM me on Twitter. But with that, that's what we see coming off of that. Let's get into the main news of the day. And we are going to start with Fox Business with a shocked Pikachu moment. That kind of moment where you're supposed to be shocked, but you're not really shocked. Fox Business reports Biden's student loan handout to cause spike in college tuitions, experts say. I knew this was going to happen. You've rewarded this bad behavior. And now they can say, hey, you need to have this degree in order to get the job. And, you know, I control the prices. But don't worry, just come here because you might get forgiven again. So let's just not worry about it. From Jessica Chasmar. President Biden's student loan handout will cause already soaring college tuition costs to spike even further, according to multiple economy and education experts who spoke with Fox Business on Wednesday. Americans are poised to foot nearly a $300 billion deal with Biden's announcement Wednesday to cancel $10,000 for each student loan borrower, $20,000 for borrowers who receive Pell Grants, and extend a repayment pause through December 31st, 2022. The handout only applies to borrowers earning less than $125,000 a year. Undergraduate loan borrowers can cap repayment at 5% of their monthly income, Biden said. Some things that have been pointed out in various other outlets yesterday, especially when it comes down to the number. Now, I'm going to tell you right off, if you're making $1.25 a year, you're doing all right. You're probably not struggling to do a lot of this, but that's only for single borrowers. And that's important to note. Because if you are married and or head of household in the situation that you're in, that amount extends almost or up to $250,000 per your household, no matter what the balance is between the two. So, I'm not going to cite those people. I was going to cite somebody that I know, but I'm like, no, let's leave their situation out of this. But let's just use it for example here. Now, instead of possibly, you know, both income earners are $125,000 earners. You know, you're in a yuppie dink household, dual income, no kids, and you're living the big life, $250,000, and both your loans, or $10,000 of both your loans are forgiven. That's all well and good because you're powering through the stock market. But what about other households? Households where there is a disparity between the two. Or, and this is the fun one, Johnny executive went to college, got almost everything paid out, but still has 10 grand left, let's say, between his principal and interest. Or maybe he did just go out and get a student loan for $8,000 or so just last year. Now he's on the fast track, he's an executive. He's making $250,000 a year, and he's got his stay-at-home trophy wife, who just goes there, squeezes out a couple puppies, and raises them. That household is eligible for Johnny Executive student loans to be forgiven. This dude on top of the world, the millionaire/billionaire class that the left says they hate so much, is eligible for this. And I can't imagine there aren't people out here who are starting to figure this out and saying, hey, wait a second. This doesn't quite math. But realistically, Johnny Executive now is going to go run out and vote for Biden because he had his vote bought for him for 10 freaking grand, and Mrs. Executive is probably going to go back out and do the same. According to the Penn-Wharton budget model, the handout will cost around $300 billion for taxpayers and will increase to around $330 billion if the program is continued over the standard 10-year budget window. The Committee for a Reasonable Federal Budget estimates the absent other reforms and federal financial aid, outstanding federal student loan debt will return to the current $1.6 trillion level in just 4 years. After $10,000 per borrower is canceled, if all debt were to be canceled, like what progressives want, the debt would return to today's level in 15 years. The report said, oh yeah. Oh, you know it would. You know full well it would. The handout is also expected to cause college tuition prices to rise and add to the inflation crisis, several experts told Fox Business. Students will feel likely liberated to borrow more money on the assumption of future loan forgiveness in universities. We'll take advantage of the additional borrowing by raising tuition, said Brian Riedel, a senior fellow in budget, tax, and economic policy at the Manhattan Institute. This is pretty similar to the fact that historically 60% of all student aid increases have been captured with tuition hikes, and this will be treated like an increase in student aid moving forward, which suggests that 60% will be countered by tuition hikes. Riedel was referring to the so-called Bennett hypothesis that was tested in 2015 by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, which determined that increases in subsidized loans that result in tuition hikes of up to 60 cents on the dollar and unsubsidized loans led to tuition hikes up to 15 cents on the dollar. Riedel said Biden's student loan handout will further encourage students to overborrow. The government coming in to solve a problem that the government caused is going to cause another problem that the government will then come back in years later to try to solve. Doesn't that excite you? Students have already been overborrowing for decades if they believe any of the borrowing will be at least partially forgiven in the future. All restraints are off, he said. This is kind of like what we see with immigration amnesty. Whenever Congress passes amnesty for immigrants, it encourages more immigrants to come and cross the border in anticipation of future amnesties. DACA. So there's always the assumption that these one-time policies will be renewed, and therefore you encourage the same behavior. We're starting to get a crowd in here. Keep in mind that the live chat's going to get read at the end of the show, so if you've got your spicy takes, they may get read on the air. According to a 2021 report by the Foundation for Economic Education, college tuition and fees cost a steady 18 to 19% of family income from the 60s until the late 70s. Then in 73, Congress established Sallie Mae to provide subsidized student loans. Wow, another problem that the government caused. And in 78, tuition and fees began an upward trajectory up to 45% of family income. Today's student loan forgiveness will cause colleges and universities to respond by raising tuition commensurately, the report said. Experts argue that Biden's student loan handout will worsen inflation crises and add billions to the deficit, erasing the supposed benefits of Biden's newly signed Inflation Reduction Act. The student loan payment pauses that have already contributed to inflation, and forgiving $10,000 per borrower is even more aggressive, and therefore certainly it's at odds with the admin's supposed push to reduce inflation, Riedel said. There was an Atlantic article that I didn't put on the stack for the day, but I started reading through it while I was getting ready, and they're trying to claim that this will reduce inflation. Because they believe their readers are stupid, I'm guessing. As far as this goes, and this kind of actually goes to the opposite of what I've said about both the healthcare industries and education, and I've been saying this all the way back since Elaine was my co-host. In fact, her and I had a discussion about this on One Red Net Show one night, because one of the big problems is the government intervention in both the healthcare markets and the student markets. If you eliminated the FAFSA system entirely, you would have about a year where nobody would go to college. I wouldn't even say a full year. I would say about a semester, where everyone would look at their bills and say, I can't afford this. I can't go to college. Maybe I'll go to the trades. And then you would see the price of college per year plummet. It's the same with healthcare. If you abolished all insurance, and I'm even going to go as far as to say abolish all insurance, not just government-run insurance. If you abolished all insurance, you'd be able to pay for a hospital visit in 2 months with a change out of your pocket. Because the thing of that is both with college and the healthcare industry, the government has subsidized them and they can go raise prices knowing that they'll get paid, either through the insurance company or for the student loan company. They know that they're going to get paid. But they don't make money unless there are butts in seats in the college aspect, or unless there are butts in beds in the hospital aspect. So if they start to run into a situation where there are not butts in seats or butts in beds, then they're going to be staring down the barrel of losing money in a hurry. Now, in both cases, well, you just hate black people because you don't want them to go to college. Or, on the other aspect of it, on the other end, well, you just want grandma to die, that's why you want to abolish insurance. No, I want to make everything out and achievable to the rest of us. Because once again, it takes butts and seats. And by the way, if the cost of a medical degree goes down significantly because they need to have butts and seats, guess what's going to happen to those hospital bills? Now again, and I know this is an extreme step that's probably unlikely to ever be taken, but it seems to be probably what would have the most impact on the prices of things. But one of the things that we see coming off of this, let's grab one from NBC. The article that is the title card of this: White House shines a light on Republicans who are criticizing student debt cancellation after getting their PPP loans forgiven. You know, we're not going to have a word about the Democrats who took the PPP loans or the people who defrauded the government of the PPP loans. No, let's instead talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene, because that's going to move the needle somewhere. From Zoe Richards. The White House hit back at Republicans in an uncharacteristic manner on Thursday by using its Twitter account to go after GOP lawmakers who are bashing President Joe Biden's move to cancel some student debt after they personally benefited from having Paycheck Protection Program loans forgiven during the Pox pandemic. In a series of tweets, the White House highlighted several congressional Republicans: Vern Buchanan of Florida, Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, Mike Kelly of Pennsylvania, Mark Wayne Mullen, and Kevin Hern of Oklahoma, who said it had 6- and 7-figure PPP loans forgiven as part of a federal program intended to help those harmed by the coronavirus. Why are million-dollar businesses getting loans that are intended for small businesses? That's my first question. And I do understand where we're sitting out here and we're seeing people taking advantage of this. Again, I know people who took advantage of this, who went out and got the loan, who were actually doing okay and were forced to stay open because they were essential businesses during the pandemic, who still went out and got the Paycheck Protection loan, and after having laid people off, were out begging people that they had laid off for other reasons to come back, because it was the only way they could get free money from the government. There's some shifty business practices around the Paycheck Protection Program. I was a critic of the Paycheck Protection Program from the beginning for this reason. Because whenever you have a program like this, it's always rife with fraud. And what are we seeing? The opportunity for something to be rife with fraud. Like many of their GOP colleagues, the lawmakers have blasted Biden over a student loan decision. Green, who said on Newsmax that it's completely on fire for student loans to be forgiven, had $183,504 in PPP loans forgiven, according to the White House.
say, okay, well, your debt is completely forgiven. Obviously, they have an agenda for that. They need votes in November. So the timing is a pure coincidence there as well. But it's completely unfair. And taxpayers all over the country, taxpayers that never took out a student loan, taxpayers that pay their bills and maybe even never went to college or just hardworking people, they shouldn't have to pay off the great big student loan debt for some college student that piled up massive debt going to some Ivy League school. That's not fair. But for our government just to say, okay, well, your debt is completely forgiven. Obviously, they have an agenda for that. They need votes in November. So the timing is a pure coincidence there as well. But it's completely unfair. And taxpayers all over the country, taxpayers that never took out a student loan, taxpayers that pay their bills and maybe even never went to college or just hardworking people, they shouldn't have to pay off the great big student loan debt for some college student that piled up massive debt going to some Ivy League school. That's not fair. But for our
And she is right. It's not fair. And on the other aspect, if I could run out and say that it's not fair for that the government went out and told you can't go out and do business. Now, and again, we knew people who were eager and had found a way almost immediately to go back and qualify for the Paycheck Protection loan the way they were. That's another thing that's rife with fraud. And by the way, even though it does look like this is going to be an opt-in, I guarantee you that there's going to be a lot of fraud that happens with the student loan forgiveness as well. Some numbers fudged, some income numbers fudged, and hey, maybe some hotshot real estate agent out there or broker who on paper makes $0 a year but is still pulling in, after writing off all the expenses, $500,000 a year, especially if the dude's really, really good, it suddenly qualifies for this. And yes, the possibility is out there for that. So that's what they have to say for Marjorie Taylor Greene. But let's see. Kelly, who tweeted that Biden's move was poised to benefit Wall Street advisors at the cost of plumbers and carpenters, had $987,237 forgiven, the White House said. Buchanan, who according to the White House had more than 2.3 million PPP loans forgiven, tweeted that Biden's move was reckless and a unilateral student loan giveaway. There are a couple big differences off this. Now, one way that I would say could possibly rectify this is if, in order to get your student loan forgiven, to bring this back on par with what the Paycheck Protection loan was supposed to be, not what it turned out being, obviously, of course, but what it was supposed to be, was you're eligible for student loan forgiveness up to $10,000 if you run a business that employs currently, let's say 10 people. Let's put an arbitrary number out there. I would be willing to take it down to as low as 4, but let's say 10. Just for a number. Just for a number to come out and say, let's make an example out of this. If you own a business that employs 10 people, you're now eligible for $10,000 of student loan forgiveness. And if you own a business that employs 20 people, you're eligible for, we'll scale it for that. For the number of people that you employ directly, not indirectly, actually directly, that you own. Not that you manage, not that you run, not department that you run, that you physically yourself own. That would put this on par with the Paycheck Protection loan. But in addition to this, the other thing that would make this on par between the two of them would be if this came from Congress, not from executive order. See, there are big differences between the way that these programs operate and the way that they were rolled out from the government, and including with questions as to whether or not Cardano actually is in the right and legally able to wipe all this away using the HEROES Act. Let's read a little bit on the same thing from the Daily Wire. White House lashes out at Republicans over student loan cancellation. Conservatives fire back. So this is some of the response back. The White House has lashed out at congressional Republicans who criticized the Biden admin student loan debt forgiveness program. In a long Twitter thread Thursday, the White House lashed out at Republicans in Congress who criticized the student loan forgiveness plan in media appearances on Wednesday, attempting to paint them as hypocrites because they took out a Paycheck Protection Program loan during the pinkpox pandemic, which were later forgiven. Conservatives fired back, pointing out the vast difference between loans meant to blunt the impact of the pinkpox lockdowns and loans taken out voluntarily by college students. The White House began its thread by calling out Marjorie Taylor Greene, who criticized the student loan decision in an appearance on Newsmax on Wednesday, and then they gave her name and number. Next, the White House targeted Vern Buchanan of Florida, $2.3 million. Mark Wayne Mullen and Kevin Hearn both took it. Mark Wayne Mullen had over $1.4 million in PPP loans forgiven, the White House wrote in response to Mullen's tweet. Hearn had over $1 million in PPP loans forgiven. They responded to Hearn. Mike Kelly, $987,237. White House went after Matt Gaetz because it's a date that ends in Y. Who criticized the Biden admin's latest package to Ukraine. Matt Gaetz had $482,321 in PPP loans forgiven. Conservatives on Twitter fired back at the White House's messaging, pointing out the Paycheck Protection Program established by the CARES Act in 2020 was meant to provide employers with a safety net to offset some of the costs of keeping people employed during the pinkpox lockdowns, and were easy to forgive. And I still don't consider that to be right, by the way. But the Biden admin and Democratic leaders have previously said that Biden could not forgive student loans unilaterally, and student loans are different because they were voluntarily taken out by college students. So it is now the White House's position that if the government forces you to shut down your business and provides you just compensation to keep people employed, that's the same thing as you failing to pay the college loans you voluntarily undertook. Daily Wire editor emeritus Ben Shapiro tweeted, "Geniuses." Obviously, someone passed around a memo deciding to compare the PPP to student loans. Yeah, no, that's the latest talking point. I'm guessing they gave that from MSDNC. When the programs have entirely different purposes, News Nation reporter Zaid Jilani wrote on Twitter thread, "Politicians and nonprofits, most of whom supported PPP, are retroactively portraying PPP as a privilege or giveaway when it really is just a backstop to prevent mass worker layoffs after government forced businesses to close. This is the first time I can recall the admin started attacking a program they themselves support in an improvised effort to defend another program they proposed," he added. So, there is a lot of stuff moving here, but again, the two biggest portions of this are what, like I said, what the purpose was, and an even bigger purpose is where the sourcing came from. This was a congressional program, the CARES Act, and it had a fairly significant amount of bipartisan support. I was not one of the supporters, but it had a fairly significant amount. I know some viewers of supporters. I read it in the comments section when I was criticizing it. I know a lot of you guys were supporters. I was not. Versus just handing out money to go buy votes at the end of the year. Let's read one from Fox. White House silent on whether tax increases are necessary to pay for $300 billion in student loan handout. The White House doesn't want to say anything about this? I'm shocked. Well, not really shocked. Not really. From Haris Ali. The White House is silent on how President Biden's decision to cancel between $10,000 and $20,000 in student debt for some Americans will be paid over the long run, and whether it will drive tax bills higher even for average Americans. Much of the discussion about the student debt handout was centered around its inflationary effects, but the gift will also have to be paid for, and that means taxpayers are likely to be on the hook For much of the principal and interest as cost of the handout is estimated at $300 billion and possibly as high as $600 billion, is dumped on top of the nearly $31 trillion in existing U.S. debt. Fox News Digital asked the admin about new analyses from the National Taxpayers Union Foundation, estimating that the student loan handout will cost the average U.S. taxpayer more than $2,000. The fiscally conservative think tank, in particular, says the federal government will need to figure out a way in the future to make up for the forgiven loans, whether it be spending cuts or tax hikes. Spending cuts, that's funny. Spending cut. Yeah, we're gonna see that. Much of it, the group predicts, will be via the latter. The White House did not respond to questions about the report or even if it was eyeing future tax hikes to make up for Biden's student loan handout. Admin officials, while not addressing how the added spending will be offset, have argued in recent days that the national deficit is already plunging under Biden's watch. Where? I don't believe that, by the way. We actually achieved $350 billion in deficit reduction, and this year's projected by the end of the fiscal year to be about a $1.7 trillion deficit reduction, said White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre at the daily White House briefing. Now, I want you to remember something when tax time rolls around. They have been loud and proud about the amount of money that they're spending and the amount that they want to spend. And yet they keep telling you they've reduced the deficit, they've reduced the deficit. Don't worry, we've reduced the deficit. What do you think that's going to mean come January for you? Honest actual question. What do you think that's going to mean in January for you? Because I'm telling you right now, it's not going to be anything good. But continuing to watch that and see what happens with that from the Blaze. A little bit of support coming from unlikely people. Democrats in tight election battles criticize Biden's student loan debt plan sends the wrong message. From Chris Enlow. Come on. Democrats facing competitive elections in November are not embracing President Biden's debt forgiveness plan. Chris Pappas of New Hampshire, who is facing a tight re-election battle, outright condemned Biden for sidestepping Congress. This announcement by President Biden is no way to make policy and sidestep Congress and our oversight and fiscal responsibilities. Any plan to address student debt should go through the legislative process. It should be more targeted and paid for so it doesn't add to the deficit. The president's plan also doesn't address the underlying issue of the affordability of higher education, and it is clear that the high cost continues to limit opportunities available to students. Tim Ryan of Ohio, who's running for the U.S. Senate, said Biden's plan sends the wrong message. While there is no doubt that a college education should be about opening opportunities, waiving debt for those already on a trajectory to financial security sends the wrong message to the millions of Ohioans without a degree working just as hard to make ends meet, Ryan said in a statement. Instead of forgiving student loans for six-figure earners, we should be working to level the playing field for all Americans. Catherine Cortez Mastro of Nevada similarly told the Nevada Independent, "I don't agree with today's executive action because it doesn't address the root problems that make college affordable." Jared Golden of Maine said the decision by the president is out of touch with what the majority of the American people want from the White House, which is leadership to address the most immediate challenges the country is facing. The reaction suggests that Democrats are concerned the plan is unpopular with moderate voters. You think? Those that decide the outcome of elections. Whereas Democrats appear to have been reaping electoral benefits of a post-Roe world, the perception that Biden's plan is inherently unfair will likely plague Democrats at the ballot box. Not only does the plan benefit the education at the expense of the uneducated, but it blocks future students from reaping any benefits. That's because only student loans taken out before July of 2022 are eligible for forgiveness. Meanwhile, a married couple who makes $249,000 annually could receive a maximum of $40,000 of debt forgiveness under Biden's plan. The reality alone leaves millions of Americans wondering why they should be on the hook for someone else's debt problems. And again, my big one off of this I don't like the fact that this is going to be coming out and hammering us on taxes. I really don't. But if I was a strategist, if I was a Republican strategist, I would be looking at your Marjorie Taylor Greenes, your Matt Gaetzes, your Mitch McConnells, your Kevin McCarthy's, and I would look and say, let this go through. No, I'm serious. Don't challenge us. Let this one go through. Put all these Americans on the hook for someone else's labor. Remind them that they are now going to be paying for the education that they themselves could not get. And even coming up for six-figure households, they're on this. But let this go through. Because really honestly, when I looked at something like this, when I watched this happen, about the first thing that went through my mind is, this is a dare. This is Joe Biden coming out and saying, I dare you, Congress, or I dare you, Supreme Court, to go and injunct this and block this. I dare you. Because this gives me campaign ammunition to come out and say, pack the Supreme Court. Give me the Senate so I can pack the Supreme Court. Because they're evil and they want to take away your student loan forgiveness. This was a dare. Which is why they went around in the roundabout way to get the HEROES Act on board, because this is a dare. I dare you to stop this. So yes, get on Twitter, remind everybody how bad this is, but do not do anything. Let them sleep with the consequences of this, electorally and otherwise. From Fox News, DeSantis called Biden's student loan handout unconstitutional, said colleges should pay for it. Yeah, that's the other side of it. It should be the colleges that continue to jack their price with government intervention that should be paying for it, not you and me. From Bradford Betts. Ron DeSantis on Thursday criticized Biden's student loan handout, saying universities should be held accountable instead of the American taxpayer. It's very unfair to have a truck driver have to pay back a loan from somebody who got a PhD in gender studies. That's not fair. That's not right, the Republican governor told a press conference, eliciting applause. He then argued that universities had benefited the most from exorbitant debt that's been taken out over the last generation. Much of the rising costs, he said, have gone towards expanding administrative offices without discernible rise in the quality of education itself. Well, they can't raise the quality of education itself because they're not getting the best students out of the school system. The people that should pay for it are not the American taxpayers. It should be the universities that should be responsible for that. If they're producing people to go deep into debt and their degree is not worth anything, then they're not able to make enough money to pay it back, and that's on them, DeSantis said. They've had an incentive to get more and more loans taken out and then put it into their pocket. Based. I don't heap a lot of praise on DeSantis, but based. So that's what we see off the student loans, and like I say, the best thing, if I was a GOP strategist, if I had Ronna McDaniel's ear right now, I would say, just let this one happen. Chalk this one up, let it happen, continue to remind your working class people of what they're about to be on the hook for. But let this happen. Do not challenge this. Because that's what they're waiting for you to do, is to challenge this. And they've already got the campaign ads written. Let's talk about this one here. Why is Ann Rayburn on the back of this? Why is there an ABC News story about Ann Rayburn? And what does that have to do with the Cincinnati Zoo? I don't know. Mind you, this story has absolutely nothing to do with that particular musician from YouTube, who I may or may not have a crush on. Oops, did I say that out loud? Parrot pleads guilty to stealing Ashley Biden's diary, selling it to Project Veritas. From Luke Barr. Two Florida residents have pleaded guilty to stealing the diary of Ashley Biden, President Biden's youngest daughter, and then selling it to right-wing activist group Project Veritas, the Justice Department announced on Thursday. Amy Harris and Robert Kurlander, 58, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit interstate transportation of stolen property involving the theft of personal belongings of an immediate family member of a then former government official for taking several items belonging to Ashley Biden in September of 2020. The charge carries a maximum of 5 years in prison. Kurlander has also agreed to cooperate with the government. Well, that was your first problem. Though Ashley Biden, 41, is not named in the court documents, a source familiar with the case confirmed that they were her belongings. Harris and Kurlander stole personal property from an immediate family member of a candidate for national political office, U.S. Attorney Damian Williams said in a statement. They sold the property to an organization in New York for $40,000 and even returned to take more of the victim's property when asked to do so. Biden had stored a handwritten journal containing highly personal entries, tax records, a digital storage card containing private family photographs, and a cell phone, among other things, in private residence in Delray Beach, Florida. When Harris was also staying. After she stole Biden's items, she contacted Kurlander, and they got in touch with a representative from Project Veritas. They met with a Veritas employee in New York City shortly after they made contact with them, the DOJ said. So, I have a lot of really big questions about this. My biggest question about this is, why is this different when it's a government official? Wouldn't we want to have transparency with our government officials and the bad things that they do? Which it does appear that this is one of the bad things that they do. Wouldn't you want more transparency for this? Because I guarantee that there wouldn't be any 5-year sentence if there was just some no-name cracked-out junkie who had his diary stolen in the same rehab center. Yeah, Horatius says it right. They're probably going to go arrest O'Keefe soon over this too. The only thing that makes this a crime appears to be the fact that it has to do with a Biden, which goes right along with that line of two-tier justice system. Let's see. After she stole Biden's items, she contacted Kurlander and they got in touch with a representative from Veritas. They met with a Veritas employee in New York City shortly after they made contact with them, the DOJ said. During that meeting, Harris described the circumstances of how she'd obtained the property and provided the property to the organization. Court documents say after the meeting and at the organization's request, Harris and Kurlander returned to Florida to obtain more of the victim's property in order to provide it to the organization. They were paid $20,000 each by Veritas after providing more of Biden's personal belongings, according to the DOJ. In a statement Thursday, Veritas said, Project Veritas news gathering was ethical and legal. A journalist's lawful receipt from the material later alleged to be stolen is routine, commonplace, and is protected by the First Amendment. Yeah, it should be, because there should not be a penalty for criticizing your government. Alternately on this, another one that might clear the former guy, Trump campaign rejected offer to buy Biden daughter's diary. From Lachlan Markey. Donald Trump's 2020 presidential campaign rejected an offer to buy President Biden's daughter's stolen diary, federal prosecutors say. The revelation comes amid a criminal investigation into how the diary and other property belonging to Ashley Biden ended up in the hands of a right-wing journalist. Two Florida individuals pled guilty on Thursday to transporting stolen property across state lines for their roles in selling Ashley Biden's diary to Project Veritas, the organization run by conservative provocateur James O'Keefe. The The criminal information filed as part of the guilty plea reveals two people, Amy Harris and Robert Kurlander, received $20,000 each for the material. Harris and Kurlander first approached Trump campaign about buying the stolen material, the court filing says. Instead, the Trump campaign told them to take the material to the FBI, which is what they really should have done in the first place. Although, it does appear that the FBI would have just buried the story, which we'll be talking about with the Zuckerberg interview in just a few minutes. The Trump campaign can't use it, Kurlander texted Harris. They want it to go to the FBI, but there's no way Trump can use this. It has to be done a different way. Those details add new context to efforts by Harris and Kurlander to cash in on the highly sensitive stolen information by weaponizing it politically. I mean, how about we just come to the agreement that this dude here is a frickin' creepazoid, instead of coming back to try to benefit it politically? Oh, I know, because there's no morals in this world anymore. Biden had some things to say about the MAGA organization that refused to use this diary. From the Hill, Biden says, extreme MAGA philosophy is like semi-fascism. President Biden on Thursday likened the MAGA wing of the GOP to fascism, leaning into his midterm campaign strategy to paint the Republicans as extreme. What's my line? What we're seeing now is either the beginning of the death knell of the extreme MAGA philosophy. It's not just Trump, man. Come on. It's the entire philosophy that underpins the. I'm gonna say something. It's like semi-fascism, man. He said at a fundraising event hosted by the Democratic National Committee in Bethesda, Maryland. Let me see if I can find this speech. So it doesn't look like either of the outlets that I have talking about this have video. But I kind of think I know who might. Okay, maybe not there. I know, this is thrilling programming. Me trying to go back and find video that I should have found right before we got started. Oh, no, apparently it's not on either of the ones that usually do that. Give that a second to load, and I think we've got it. And it might have to come from HuffPo, because why wouldn't it come from HuffPo? We'll read while that's loading. The White House has said Biden, while campaigning for Democrats ahead of November, will aim to paint Republicans as stewards of special interests who are pursuing an extreme MAGA agenda that costs families seeking to tie them to former President Trump's Make America Great Again slogan. So it'll be exactly like every other campaign in history. The event in Maryland was the first formal pre-midterm event for Biden, who was expected to fan out across the country to tout his agenda. The White House press secretary, token diversity hire, previewed the president's remarks earlier on Thursday and said he would display the choice before Americans. Biden, at the event, mentioned the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe, as well as the potential for Republicans to work towards overturning marriage equality or repealing the Affordable Care Act. And this is not your father's Republican Party, man. It's just a different deal. Our team has to show up and quite frankly, just simply vote. Maybe that's not going to load. That's lame. So maybe we won't be able to get to see this. That's lame. He also targeted Rick Scott, the head of GOP's Senate campaign arm, for his tax plan that Biden has consistently criticized and that no other Republican has got on board with, by the way. The White House has sought to tie congressional Republicans to the plan, but other lawmakers have either distanced themselves from the plan or declined to embrace it. Rick Scott, who heads up the ultra-mega agenda for Republicans, he thinks everyone in America should pay taxes, Biden said on Thursday. Scott's plan says that all Americans should pay some income tax to have skin in the game, even if it's a small amount, which the White House has bashed as a move to require everyone to pay taxes. And again, I remind you that nobody got on board with that. But yes, we've gone from ultra MAGA to extreme MAGA, but still not mega MAGA. From CNN, and again, you've got the still but no video. Biden criticizes semi-fascism underpinning the extreme MAGA philosophy in a fiery return to the campaign trail. When was he on the campaign trail before? Oh, are you talking about the times where they could fill up the arena with cars because it was a drive-in event? Or the times where they had 6 circles pointed out for all the followers to get there? Those? From Kevin Liptak and Betsy Klein. President Biden offered his sharpest rebukes on Thursday of Republicans who have stuck to the credo of his predecessor, labeling it semi-fascism, and predicting it has gone too far for most of the country. It was a forceful kickoff to the midterm politicking for the president, who later spoke to a capacity crowd of supporters in Maryland high school gymnasium to test run the message he's expected to tout aggressively for Democrats this fall. He filled a high school gym in Maryland, and this is supposed to be impressive to the rest of us? Are you serious? It was one of the most spirited speeches. As Commander-in-Chief, Biden cast his presidency as one of recovery from the pinkopox pandemic. We've come a long way, while lambasting Republicans who were blocking him at every turn. In 2020, you and 81 million Americans, honk honk, voted to save our democracy, Biden told a roaring crowd of 12. That's why Donald Trump is just a former president. He's a defeated former president. Oh my God. This is cringier than I thought it was going to be. I wonder if there's no video because he just spent the entire time stumbling over his words. I wish I could see this at this point. Let me try one more thing. We might have this from The Independent. Let's check this. Let's see what we got and see how bad they cut it up.
Just 76 days away from the midterm election. 76 days. And to state the obvious, there's a lot at stake. So I want to be crystal clear about what's on the ballot this year. Your right to choose is on the ballot this year. The Social Security you paid for from the time you had a job is on the ballot. The safety of your kids from gun violence is on the ballot. And it's not hyperbole, the very survival of our planet is on the ballot. Your right to vote is on the ballot. Even the democracy. Are you ready to fight for these things now?
Wow, I wonder how long that was going. So apparently we won't be able to hear the Mega Maga thing. The Ultra Mega, the Extreme Mega, because there's the instance there now where we look back and we see, I wonder how much he was actually stumbling over his words when he got to that point. But now that we're back at where we were at, that was dumb. Arizona passed a law barring video recording within 8 feet of law enforcement. The ACLU and news organizations are now suing. From Paradise Afshar and Noreen Salehia. And I'm looking at this right now, and the first thing I've got to think to myself is, dude, don't make me defend the ACLU. The ACLU sucks. But you give credit where credit is due. You actually look back and you say, okay, when you're actually going to call something out correctly, okay, you're in the right. The ACLU still sucks, but... The ACLU and multiple news organizations filed a suit over an Arizona law that made it a crime to video record within 8 feet of law enforcement activity after a warning is given from an officer. The law, which was signed by Republican Governor Doug Ducey in July, includes some exceptions that allow for passengers to video record during traffic stops for the subject of police contact to record as long as it doesn't interfere with police actions. From the start, the law sparked concerns over transparency and accountability. No crap. In recent years, cell phone footage of interactions with law enforcement has been viewed as a tool to document instances of police brutality and hold officers accountable. Bystanders footage played a notable role in the case of St. George, hallowed be his name, whose death ignited nationwide protests because they were pushed forward by a media with an agenda, answering to a government with an agenda. After he was filmed pleading, "I can't breathe," while being held down by a Minneapolis police officer. The newly filed suit alleges the new Arizona law is vague and has blatant constitutional issues. The plaintiffs, who include outlets in Arizona, filed the lawsuit in the U.S. District Court of Arizona, arguing the law infringes on the First Amendment rights of journalists and everyone in Arizona to record the public activities of law enforcement officers. And here's the bigger issue. If you have nothing to hide, you're the state. Why do you not want people recording? If you're doing everything by the book and only being out there for public safety and protecting the American people, why so much opacity in this? This is just wrong. Yo, I'm telling you right off the bat, this is just wrong. You should be able to go back and do a recording if you see something out of place. Or even if you think something is going to be out of place. You should be right there, immediately able to come back in and say, hey, this is what's going on. So you can give it out to a prosecuting attorney, or a judge, or a government official and say, hey, let's fix something. But that's what we have for that. From the Blaze on the same thing, ACLU sues Arizona over new law that restricts how citizens are allowed to film police. From Candace Hathaway. What is HB 2319? On July 6th, Doug Ducey signed House Bill 2319, which, starting in September, will make it illegal for an individual to knowingly make a video recording of law enforcement activity if the person making the video recording is within 8 feet of where the person knows or reasonably should know that law enforcement activity is occurring. The act includes exceptions for the 8-foot rule. For example, if a person is recording an officer on private property, they may record from within 8 feet as long as they're not directly interfering with police activity. Additionally, if the person recording is the subject of police contact, they may record the interaction with the officer as long as they are not interfering with lawful police actions, including searching, handcuffing, or administering a field sobriety test. The law protects citizens subject to a traffic stop, stating that they may record the encounter. So, yeah, you can get it on your dash cam, but, I mean, what else is there? Oh, you're about to be handcuffed, so you can't record the situation. The last time I had an interaction with a police officer, I didn't have video recording of it, but I had audio recording of it, and he had no idea. And he pulled me out of the truck, and he decided he needed to go pat me down. And he found my wireless headphones, by the way. And I was recording the whole thing, which, because my headphones were Bluetoothed into my phone, the microphone on them was going. What's the ACLU saying about HB 30? Oh, by the way, it's maximum 30 days, but likely will only result in a fine. Still, the ACLU's Arizona chapter joined several other nonprofits and news outlets in the lawsuit against Arizona. A blog article from the ACLU stated the act prevents people from exercising their constitutional right to record. It accused the law of containing toothless exceptions regarding the 8-foot rule, stating that officers could override each exception if they decided the individual recording interferes with law enforcement activity. Which means that you can come back out and say, "Oh no, you're just being here. You were taunting. It's interfering with activity. Shut that down now." I don't like this one bit, not even a little bit. Let's talk more Biden here. From the Daily Wire, Biden says he didn't have any advance notice of the Trump raid, in spite of the fact that he was the one that overturned the executive privilege decision that made the raid possible. I call bullcrap on this. Let's listen. See, we have this speech. We don't have the other one that's literally, like Randy says, literally nothing on the ballot, but we have this one.
President, how much advance notice did you have of the FBI's plan to search Mar-a-Lago?
I didn't have any advance notice. None. Zero. Not one single bit. Thank you.
Mr. President, is this unfair to people who paid their student loans or chose not to take out loans?
Is it fair to people who, in fact, do not own multi-billion-dollar businesses if they want these guys to give them all a tax break? Is that fair? What do you think?
What about people who paid their loans, though, struggled to pay their loans, and now others don't have to?
Good old back-turner Biden. Doing what he does best. Turn his back. Well, and he might actually be correct on the fact that he had no advance notice. Now, somebody probably told him at some point, but he does have Alzheimer's, so he probably doesn't remember that somebody told him. From Insider, DOJ released a secret memo that recommended not charging Trump with obstruction of Mueller's Russia investigation. So now Billy Barr is back in the crosshairs again. He's evil again. He was good, but now he's evil. From C. Ryan Barber and Sonam Sheth. The Justice Department on Wednesday released a once-secret 2019 memo that recommended against charging then-President Trump with obstruction in connection with Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election. The 9-page memo's release in response to a court order sheds additional light on one of the most climactic and controversial moments of the Trump presidency, whether he should face federal indictment or trying to stop the Mueller probe itself. In their preparation of the 2019 memo, a pair of top Trump-appointed Justice Department officials relied on more than 400-page report in which Mueller summarized the findings of his special counsel team's investigation. At the time, the Justice Department had not yet released the Mueller report, which was divided into 2 volumes, the first involving the inquiry into Russia's interference, the second concerning whether Trump illegally sought to obstruct the investigation itself. Referring to that second volume, top Justice Department officials Stephen Engel and Edward O'Callaghan wrote that in their memo that the evidence is not, in our judgment, sufficient to support a conclusion beyond a reasonable doubt that the president violated the obstruction of justice statutes. Engel authored the memo as head of the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel, a unit tasked with weighing some of the thorniest legal questions faced by the executive branch. The OLC memo went on to say that the special counsel's report did not identify actions on Trump's part that, in their office's view, constituted obstructive acts done with nexus to a pending proceeding with the corrupt intent necessary to warrant prosecution for an obstruction of justice. In urging then AG Barr not to prosecute Trump for obstruction, the memo said that there was no precedent for an obstruction case on similar facts. And now Insider. Trump's 11 instances of possible obstruction. Coming back out here to cement the things into the minds of the people who read Insider that it's just Bill Barr being an evil Trump supporter. You know, he was a hero. No, he was an evil lackey, and then he was a hero because of the electioneering things, and then he was an evil lackey again when he declined to go press charges. Then he was a hero again because of the January 6th testimony that he didn't even come out and give live, that he gave pre-recorded, cut up, and redacted to make it say whatever they wanted it to say, and now he's a villain once again. The Curious Life of William Barr from Fox News. Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg tells Joe Rogan FBI warned Facebook of Russian propaganda before Hunter Biden laptop story. Yeah, Zuckerberg was on Rogan, and I am going to listen to it. I have it on my list. I'm going to listen to PJ Patriot probably today. I'm going to listen to Zuckerberg. So I think this is going to be interesting, but I haven't heard any of this yet. From Joseph A. Wolfson. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg revealed that the FBI approached Facebook, warning the platform about Russian propaganda ahead of the bombshell Hunter Biden laptop story leading up to the 2020 election. Appearing on Thursday's installment of the Joe Rogan Experience, Zuckerberg was asked about Facebook's suppression of the New York Post reporting that it shed light on the shady business dealings of the son of then-candidate Joe Biden. Zuckerberg began stressing how Facebook took a different path than Twitter, which completely censored the Post reporting while Facebook limited its reach on the platform. Basically, the background here is the FBI, I think, basically came to us, some folks on our team, and was like, hey, just so you know, like, you should be on high alert. We thought that there was a lot of Russian propaganda in the 2016 election. We have it on notice that basically there is about to be some kind of dump of that is similar to that, so just be vigilant. I speak in contractions, so I am totally relatable. Zuckerberg told host Joe Rogan. Zuckerberg insisted that Facebook users were still allowed to share the Post reporting on the Hunter Biden laptop, even as their third-party fact-checking program was looking into whether it was misinformation, but acknowledged that the ranking in the news feed was a little bit less than, and that fewer people saw it than would have otherwise. But what percentage? Rogan asked. I don't know off the top of my head, but it is meaningful, Zuckerberg responded. But we weren't sort of black and white about it as Twitter. We just kind of thought, hey, look, if the FBI, which I still view as a legitimate institution in this country, it's a very professional law enforcement. They come to us and they tell us we need to be on guard about something, then I want to take that seriously. Would you like some sweet baby rays? That's... Actually, you can pull this out of archive. Well, I can see the Minds page. Let's scroll down a little bit and see what we've got. Is this the Post? Yep, this is the Post. So let's listen to it.
How do you guys handle things when they're a big news item that's controversial? Like, there was a lot of attention on Twitter during the election because of the Hunter Biden laptop story. The New York Post.
Had that too.
Yeah, so you guys censored that as well?
So we took a different path than Twitter. I mean, basically the background here is the FBI, I think, basically came to us, some folks on our team, and was like, hey, just so you know, like, you should be on high alert. There was we thought that there was a lot of Russian propaganda in the 2016 election. We have it on notice that basically there's about to be some kind of dump of that's similar to that. So just be vigilant. So our protocol is different from Twitter's. What Twitter did is they said you can't share this at all. We didn't do that. What we do is we have, if something is reported to us as potentially misinformation, important misinformation, we also have this third-party fact-checking program because we don't want to be deciding what's true and false. And for I think it was 5 or 7 days when it was basically being determined whether it was false, the distribution on Facebook was decreased, but people were still allowed to share it. So you could still share it, you could still consume it.
So when you say the distribution is decreased,
it got shared.
How does that work?
It basically, the ranking in newsfeed was a little bit less. So fewer people saw it than would have otherwise. So it definitely...
By what percentage?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it's meaningful. But basically, a lot of people were still able to share it. We got a lot of complaints that was the case. Obviously this is a hyper-political issue, so depending on what side of the political spectrum, you either think we didn't censor it enough or censored it way too much. But we weren't sort of as black and white about it as Twitter. We just kind of thought, hey, look, if the FBI, which I still view as a legitimate institution in this country, it's like very professional law enforcement, if they come to us and tell us that we need to be on guard about something, then I want to take that seriously.
Did they specifically say you need to be on guard about that story?
No, I don't remember if it was that specifically, but it basically fit the pattern.
Now, I actually am kind of interested to hear the rest of this interview. It was just a passing interest, but now that we've seen who knows how everything is made, it'll be interesting to see. And I do think that this was a finger on the scale kind of moment. Zuckerberg tells Rogan Facebook was wrong to ban the post-Hunter Biden laptop story. But, it got the right outcome, so we'll just sweep it under the rug and look past it. I don't know if he asked that or not, Horatius. I haven't listened to the whole article, or the whole interview. It is on deck. I am curious about this. The billionaire CEO of Meta said he regretted Facebook's response to the Biden story during an appearance on JRE after the host pressed him to explain his views on how tech platforms should handle content moderation on sensitive subjects. When it turns out something like that turns out to be real, is there regret? Oh, that's Rogan. When something like that turns out to be real, is there regret for not having it evenly distributed and throttling the distribution of that story? Rogan asked about the post-Hunter Biden scoop. Yeah, it sucks, Zuckerberg said. It turned out after the fact checkers looked into it. No one was able to say it was false. I think it sucks, though. And in the same way that probably having to go through a criminal trial, but being proven innocent in the end sucks. And then, we already heard him say that it's a legitimate institution, so we can gloss over this one. Speaking of legitimate institutions, the city of Miami holds another gun buyback with plans to give the firearms to Ukraine. Aren't you, those of you in Florida, excited? Don't you want to run out to Miami and give away all your guns? For much, much less than you bought them for, so they can go out to Ukraine. The city of Miami is once again holding a gun buyback with a twist. The guns collected during the event could end up being transported over to the war-torn country of Ukraine, where Russia has been waging a brutal attack since earlier in the year. People can score a $50, $100, or even $150 gift card if they turn in a firearm during the upcoming buyback this Saturday. If they turn in a firearm that they paid $300, $700, or $1,500 on. Turn in your firearm to receive $50 gift card for a firearm, $100 gift card for a shotgun or rifle, $150 gift card for a high-powered rifle, .223 caliber AR-15 AK-47. But they put a twist on this one, because this, of course, is going over to the Ukraine. Homemade, replica-style firearms, BB guns, or airsoft guns will not qualify to receive a gift card, but can be turned in for public safety. Doesn't this make you want to run out and go turn in your arms? 1 second. Sorry, I had a little tickle in my throat over there. The city of Miami has set up a voluntary gun buyback to assist in providing safety and defense equipment to Ukraine. So, you're going to steal armaments from people, take them without a just compensation, I would add, because they're in value much higher than this. So there's that, and then you're going to traffic arms across the world. Is that what I'm hearing off of this? Turning in an undesired gun is a great way to take guns off the street by preventing a potential of them falling into the wrong hands. Turning in a gun during the gun buyback provides safety and security, knowing that the weapon will be properly disposed of or reallocated for use in support of Ukraine. I'm gonna tell you, that's gonna be a no for me, dog. A little bit of a narrative shift for us. I'm probably going to skip around for the rest of this, because there are a few that I still want to get to. Trump White House exerted pressure on FDA for COVID-19 emergency use authorizations. House report finds. That narrative is shifting. Pfizer, they're about to go under the bus. I think people are starting to realize that they just gave support to Big Pharma for 2 full years from Catherine Ellen Foley. The Trump admin pressured the FDA, including the FDA Commissioner Stephen Hahn, to authorize unproven treatments for the pinko pox and the first vaccines on accelerated timeline, according to a report released Wednesday by Democrats in the House Select Subcommittee on the pinko pox crisis. That's right. The vaccines that they told you were going to be mandated to take, that they begged you to take, that they said that they would give you a gift card or enter you in a lottery or give you a scholarship for if you took, are now going to be on the edge of, oh, well, he rushed them through. Are we starting to see enough myocarditis come out of this? Can I say myocarditis on YouTube? First off, that's my first question. But are we starting to see enough myocarditis come out that now we're going to go back and try to go claim that these weren't ready and all that push that we were doing was for nothing? Oh, no. We retcon this away and say, oh, no, we never wanted you to go take those. Senior Trump admin officials fought for the reauthorization of hydroxychloroquine, a drug normally used to treat malaria and lupus, after the FDA revoked its emergency clearance of the drug because data showed it was ineffective against the pinko pox, and it could lead to potentially dangerous side effects. The report found the Democrats' investigation also documents potential influence from former White House officials regarding the FDA's decision to authorize convalescent plasma, and the White House attempts to block the FDA from collecting additional safety data on the pinko pox vaccine in order to get them to the public before the 2020 presidential election. That's right. The admin and the news media that's working for the admin, that was praising the fact that there might be a mandate from OSHA that you get the vaccine, is now telling you that the vaccine might be bad and we only got it because Trump forced the FDA. Honkity honk honk mother effing honk. Let's see. Let's grab this one here. For those of you who are still fans of public school, I know there's like one of you. Missouri School District reinstates spanking as punishment. We've had people actually thank us. From Claudette Riley. Well, just make sure that you're having some conversations about that with the teachers who are in the upper grades and the messed up students from broken homes, specifically the girls who might actually be into that kind of thing. Because I could see a whole can of worms and a whole lot of people going to jail over something like that. A school district in Missouri will announce it will reinstate spanking this year, but with parental caveat. Cassville School District Superintendent Marilyn Johnson said he did not take the job a year ago with a plan to reinstate corporal punishment, a disciplinary measure the 1,900-student Berry County District abandoned in 2001. But it is something that's happened on my watch and I'm okay with it, Johnson said. Cassville is a small town with a population just under 4,000 people, about 60 miles southwest of Springfield, near the Arkansas border. Parents were recently notified of a policy approved in June by the school board to once again allow spanking in school, but only as a last resort and with written permission from the parents. Each family will be asked to opt in or out. Specifically,
I'll get you there.
describing Cassville as a very traditional community in southwest Missouri, Johnson said, with the parents having long expressed frustration that corporal punishment was not allowed in the district. Parents have said, why can't you paddle my student? And we're like, we can't paddle your student. Our policy doesn't support that, and usually state law doesn't either. He said, there's been a conversation with parents, and there have been requests from parents for us to look into it. Remember the King of the Hill where Peggy Hill spanked Dooley with a paddle? And then got suspended and then came back and like everyone was afraid of her with the paddle? Like all she had to do was wield it and everybody snapped into place and she never had to use it again, but then she's like, I don't want to be this teacher. Johnson said families in Cassville have reacted differently from others on social media from outside the area. We've had people actually thank us for it, he said. Surprisingly, those on social media would have probably been appalled to hear us say these things, but the majority of people I've run into have been supported. Well, I can see this coming into a big problem at some point. I don't think it's going to be the case, but I can see where there may be a problem with something somewhere off of this. As far as where it should go, I mean, having some of this come back will probably fix a few things, but I mean, the problems where people aren't getting spanked and having a corporal punishment or some sort of thing like that are stemming from highly liberal inner city areas. I mean, this is an area, from the description of it, where if the kid was acting off and mouthing off at home, he was probably getting his butt paddled. Already. So, I mean, this doesn't change a whole lot except for the fact that now it can happen at school from somebody who's not a parent. I don't know how I feel about this. I'm kind of in between. All right. What else? This one. We'll do this one. We're going to be doing live chat in just a minute, so if you've got last minute messages you want to get in, make sure you get them in now so that we can come back and say, it looks like we did get 100 messages throughout this stream, so that's awesome. Podcast Movement got famous yesterday, and I'd never heard of them. Podcast Movement at PM22. Hi, folks. We owe you an apology before sessions kick off for the day. Yesterday afternoon, Ben Shapiro! Oh, no! Briefly visited the PM22 Expo near the Daily Wire booth. Though he was not registered or expected, we take full responsibility for the harm done by his presence. There's no way around it. We agreed to sell the Daily Wire a first-time booth based on the company's large presence in podcasting. The weight of that decision is now painfully clear. Shapiro is a co-founder. A drop-in, however unlikely, should have been considered a possibility. But wait. There was more. They went through and deleted a bunch of chats off of this. Christy Brown, thank you for putting everything out of here. We can start from the beginning and go. They deleted a bunch of their stuff. I think that there was more. So, we got to these two. Podcast movement continues. Many in our community are appalled, not just by this incident, but by our choice to take money from the Daily Wire in the first place. As Amanki said, this was signed off on by a human, yes, during event planning. The dangerous nature of the company's messaging was overlooked. Those of you called this unacceptable are right. In 9 wonderful years growing and celebrating this medium, podcast movement has made mistakes. The pain caused by this one will always stick with us. We promise that sponsors will be more carefully considered moving forward. Just to clarify, no Daily Wire representatives were scheduled to appear on panels, and Shapiro remained in the common space and did not have a badge. If you have questions, we're here to talk. Thank you for reading, and we hope you'll continue to join us from here on out. I had never heard of Podcast Movement before this, and now it appears that I have no desire to go and give them any sort of financial supporting or go to any of their events. Would I even be welcome? And the big question is why are they now suddenly freaking out over the fact that the 6th biggest podcast host on the 5th biggest network in the world, not the country, in the world, was at the booth that you paid for, that he owns? Brief one from Newsweek. Podcast group slammed over an apology for Ben Shapiro's presence. From Xander Landon. The apology. We got that. The criticism. Several users criticized Podcast Movement for issuing the apology. This tweet is frustrating. I love PM. Podcaster Seth Silvers tweeted, referring to the Podcast Movement. I've always appreciated how inclusive PM has been, however, apologizing for hosting one of the largest networks in the industry because they believe differently than some in PM community is the least inclusive move I've seen PM do, he added. Dave Snow, a sad, strange post. Do I agree with Shapiro? No way. Can we learn from people we passionately disagree with? Yes. That sounds like fascism, Davey Snow. As Finally Watch says, you only let someone hurt you if you let them hurt you. Shapiro is editor-in-chief of Right Wing Daily Wire. No surprise he'd visit. Evan Herman, as a guest of PM 2022, I find this tweet disgusting. What they've done for the space of podcasting is important. Podcast Movement has preached nothing but inclusivity and openness to ideas and respect. You need to give Daily Wire their money back after this. Very hypocritical. Yeah, I think they do. Ben Shapiro. Okay, gang, literally shaking right now. Podcast Movement is threatening my right to exist. This is erasure, okay, gang? Look, if a 5'4" Jewish man in a yarmulke that can't lift 50 pounds is bringing you to tears, you don't need to be in the broadcast industry. Plain and simple. Let's do these last two and then we'll do live chat. So this, unfortunately, I know where this is. I had never heard of this nightclub, but once I found out it was in Madison, I looked it up in the map, and I've been in this neighborhood before. I was actually a little afraid that I would know more about this place, but it's not in the place that I thought it was. But I do know where this is, and this is disturbing. Libs of TikTok. A teen drag queen performs for cash tips at a bar and nightclub in Wisconsin. By the way, it has been reported, but I can't confirm. Number one, Mommy Dearest is helping this teen prepare for this. But number two, and this is the worst part, this is a girl, a biologically girl, who is socially and possibly medically transitioning to be a boy, who is dressing as a girl for tips, and I believe is under 18. On top of it, you have been warned. You know, one of the things that I was afraid of when I started seeing this kind of thing pop up and our society was going down this was that I was going to start getting desensitized to the horror of something like this, and I can report that right now I am not desensitized to this. I suddenly want a flood very, very, very badly. And not just a localized one. We're talking 40 days and 40 nights kind of thing. This seems very much like a Madison thing to do. I believe this. I'm a little surprised now that I know more about this, that this kind of venue is in the place that it is, because you would think, yes, even with it being Madison, that with, because this place is between a bunch of car and heavy truck and equipment dealers. Like, there's the Cat dealer, there's the Chevrolet dealer, there's the Ford dealer. There are a bunch of industrial areas completely surrounding this place. And then just out of nowhere, in a sea of industrial stuff, is this nightclub where this happened. And I'm starting to have a hard time believing that this happened there, because of the fact that of what's around this place and the fact that this place is there. But I mean, this is bad. And the last story, the thing that nobody wanted, and yet it seems like we're going to get. From Fox 8. A Christmas Story sequel has release date, reports. By the way, reminder, I've never seen the original. And yes, I'm serious. No, I'm not joking. And yes, I know they play it for 24 hours on TBS every Christmas. I'm usually doing other things on Christmas. From Jordan Unger. A sequel to the 1983 holiday classic A Christmas Story has a release date, according to reports. According to reports from Deadline, A Christmas Story Christmas will premiere on HBO Max on November 17th. Peter Billingsley will reprise his role as adult Ralphie in the 70s, who returns to his home on Cleveland Street to bring his kids a magical Christmas like the one from his childhood. Deadline reports that several other actors will reprise their roles in the sequel, including Ian Petrella, Zach Ward, Scott Schwartz, and R.D. Robb. Clay Catus, who is behind Netflix's The Christmas Chronicles, will direct the sequel for Legendary and Warner Brothers. I guess I never heard of The Christmas Chronicles. Much of the original movie was filmed right here in Cleveland, and A Christmas Story house in Tremont has become a popular tourist attraction over the years. But yeah, that's kind of like the Home Alone house, which, by the way, if you are ever in North Chicago area and you ever decide, hey, I want to go over to Winnetka and go see the Home Alone house, the address is public record. You can go find it. They've been pretty open with it. But it has been reported to me by people who are from that area because, again, that's close to Kenosha. I'm very familiar with the area. That the new owners do not like tourists. So you may be met with police presence if you go try to tour the Home Alone house. As far as the Christmas Story house, I can't speak to that. But if you go try to tour the Home Alone house, you will probably be met with some very, very deep resistance. That's what's been reported to me. Having lived in that area and loving Home Alone, I've actually never gone to see if I know where it is. I know the address. And I've looked at it on a map and I know exactly how to get there, but I've never been there. Or in that neighborhood. I've been adjacent to that neighborhood numerous times. But yes, even as being a Home Alone fan that had the opportunity to live in the area, I've never, ever seen the Home Alone house. But, yeah, the new Christmas Story is coming. Aren't you excited for woke Hollywood to go and ruin something else from your childhood? I'm lucky. I've never seen the original. Alright, what are we going to do? We're going to do live chat. That's what we're going to do. So Ron Helton is here off the top. Quest Fanning is here. Smiley Face and Sunshine. I'm not hearing music anymore. Yeah, I know. I got to make sure that I can speak over it. So I have it set where I can see it on my monitors over here. Let me change. No, if I change something out, you won't be able to see it. But I was going to say, I could probably put this up on the screen. And you can kind of see how I do things. I can show you how the cake is made, I guess. But before that, let's go in and see what the live chat is. A Monday, and this has been kind of a light live chat week. So we haven't had as many names. Plus, I think, because I know I've seen Randy more days other than yesterday, I think this week Restream was having a bug and the names from Twitch weren't pulling in. Because I know Quest was in on his Twitch account for a couple times too, and it didn't pop up on here. So if you're on Twitch, I apologize, but it doesn't appear that it showed up on here. On Monday, our chatters were Quest Fanning, Ron Helton, MK Ultra, Arvolt, Horatius, and Luke Wee. Tuesday, Quest Fanning, Ron Helton, Arvolt, Horatius. Wednesday, Ron Helton, Arvolt, Sully Blue, Jopper 9, Horatius, Quest Fanning, and Nephilim Ninja of Nibiru. Yesterday was a little bit busier, but I also think I got the Twitch names in yesterday. So, yesterday we had Arvolt, Luke Wee, Ron Helton, and by the way, I still had the restream bot up yesterday, so when I realized that I wasn't getting any of the Twitch names, I just went in and took it right from the program instead. Yesterday we had Arvolt, Luke Wee, Ron Helton, Randy Crush Saga, MK Ultra, A-Gains P, Horatius, Seawall, who was here today too, I noticed, Sully Blue, Quest Fanning, and Reset This. We've got our good mornings going in here. Sully Blue is here. Woes and wows in here. We're all pals. With stickers. Randy says Timcast released his breakout music video last night. Yeah, Tim Pool is on my list right now. I'm going to tell you that right off the bat. Tim Pool is on my list. Because, and you guys can go back through my channel or I can link it again. But I put out a video with my suggestion for student loans, what to do with them, and what to do with the fact that with the interest over there. And Tim quoted it almost verbatim on one of yesterday's videos. And I heard that. And I said, this is either an amazing coincidence or Tim just fucking ripped me off. We're trying to catch an AM radio audience and I just dropped the F-bomb like that. Tim just ripped me off. And I'll link both videos if anybody wants to see them. And you want to compare and see, and then also compare the dates. But I think Tim ripped me off. Apparently Tim's breakout music video is not a banger. Jopper9 is here. SSDD, I know what that is. Seawall is here. Armored Half Track. Quest Fanning says in other countries where college is free, no larger percentage of the population actually attends. The decision of who gets 1 degree is less on the hands of students. Yeah, that is that's one thing that's been brought up too. Is in Europe, if you are if you're getting the degree, it's because you qualify to get the degree. Otherwise, they want to send you to a trade school and put you out in the factories. They don't want to waste educational systems on focusing on somebody who's not going to get the degree and give back to the economy, which I think is a good thing. Why does J. Edgar not have a Cash App or a Venmo? I've never really had a need for one, so I can change that. I'm not a fan of PayPal, even though I just used it. Did I get a PayPal? I'll have to go look. I got a PayPal. Thank you, Jopper9. A fairly generous one, too. Thank you. Thank you. I'm not going to give the number out, but absolutely, that was a very generous one. Thank you. The whole thing smells like vomit. Wolf336 is here. All Americans should have their student loans cleared. Used to do all the crap our government has stolen for while doing their civil service. Quest says, remember how years ago there was a big push to refinance consolidated loans? Those ones don't qualify. Yeah, and there are a lot of other ones that don't qualify either, by the way. Including more than half of mine. Anne Reburn is a YouTube musician and she's fairly woke, but she's really cute. She plays like 7 instruments and knows how to mix and basically be her own chorus. Again, very woke, but very cute. KTZed got on my case for crushing on her. I was just... because I recognized the 4 panel with the headphones. Even before I looked closer and saw that that was her face, I recognized the style of how she did it. And I'm like, that's Anne Reburn. Why is there a news story about Anne Reburn? By the way, I'm going to go back and look at that and figure that out later. Probably after work, but... I huffed and I puffed and HuffPo's and blew. And HuffPo still blew. Plus Fanny says, where are they getting the idea that gay marriage is a priority issue for the right wing? I'm much more interested in reversing economic policies. Well, basically it's because Clarence Thomas said something in passing about the federal constitutionality of having a federal decision rather than having representatives do it, is why. Ron Houghton, roaring crowd of 12. Randy, literally none of those things are on the ballot. You couldn't throw one real thing out there? No. Yep, and then after the Biden speech, I turned the microphone off so I could take a drink and not have you hear a straw noise in the microphone. And then forgot to turn it back on. Horatius says, does Toe ass suck about spending $400 million in the 2020 election and organizing a network of not going to say that, even though I've already screwed up on this stream, to get Trump out of office by any means necessary? I doubt it. I don't know. I'll report back after I listen to the whole thing, because I'll do that sometime this weekend. Maybe I'll do that on a hike, because I'm thinking about going and doing that again. Amazing. The ones they pushed on us, they're blaming on Trump. Yes. Harvey McLeod is here. Arvold is here also. My job is wanting pictures of Hispanic employees for Hispanic Latinx Heritage Month. Don't say Latinx in my chat. Especially you actually being Latina. Or put quotes around it so I know that it's your job speaking through you. Arvold, I actually had to work this morning. Quest says, given compulsory attendance, I'm not okay with spanking in the schools. That said, I'm against compulsory schooling on many bases. Spanking should be the last resort before expulsion, but it should always be an option. Well, it should be the last. Honestly, and I don't have kids, so do take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt. But spanking should be a last resort no matter what. Like, that should not be the first direction that you go. I think. It should, again, just like Arvold said about in the schools, but as a parent as well, it should be an option. It should be something that is out there that you have in your repertoire, but it shouldn't be the first thing that you go for. But yes, it should always be an option, especially when parents refuse to take responsibility for their demon offspring. A girl pretending to be a boy, pretending to be a girl. Noah, get the boat. Yeah, I don't know if it's girl transitioning to boy, if that's confirmed, but that was one of the comments actually in the tweet that we got the video from, is that it was transgender male, which is girl transitioning to boy, dressing up in girl clothes to go get money for tips, which adds all, if it's true, adds all kinds of effed up to it. Jean Bonnet vibes, yes. Of course it's an industrial area. Who wants smut in their residential neighborhood? No, I get that, and I understand that. But the thing with that is, when you're in an industrial area, you're typically surrounded by a lot of buff and base people, even in woke Madison. So I'm just surprised that a gay club like this, and that's what it is, it's a gay club. I looked into it, which my FBI agent's probably really confused right now. You would think that being surrounded by this many mechanics and buffed base dudes, that there wouldn't be, that something like that wouldn't be able to thrive. Would be my thought of it, at least. Quest Panic says the owners are super protective of the Home Alone house. Yeah. Kind of makes me think of the guy who moved on next to my frat that had been there for a century. Horatio says, why would they buy a famous house if they don't want the attention? People are so freaking dumb. Amazing they're intelligent enough to get the money to buy it. Well, and that's part of it too. And honestly, if I owned the Home Alone house, if I had, what did it sell for last time? It's ridiculously priced too. It's like in the $2 million range. But, I mean, this is one of the most beloved movies of the 90s. With millennials who have huge soft spots for nostalgia. Why wouldn't you capitalize on that? But, even if I was super protective of something like that, I would probably buy that house because I know that it's going to go up in value and not by an insignificant amount because there's a demand for something like that. Hey, I want to own a famous house too. And you'll probably have 5 or 6 bidders if it goes onto the market. Chris Fanning visited the lobby with the globe from Superman the other morning. Never seen that movie. There's an ugly fence around it. We buy ugly houses. Alright, we are out of time. I actually have to go throw my boots on and get out of here. So, with that, we're done. We're out of here. Thanks everybody who came by and chatted in the live chat for the week and for the day as well. Reminder, if you guys do have something to say about the news that's going on, feel free to say it. This is a fairly free speech area. Even if I don't read it on air, I do read all your comments and I take them to heart and I use them to organize out the show. So that's how I mean, even if John for 9 hadn't mentioned something about Venmo, or had mentioned something on Venmo during the week, I still would be out there because I know there's interest in that for payments. So, and thank you again for the donation, John for 9. Thanks everybody who came by, watched the ads, went over on the Twitch side, threw the bits. I know that Gaines threw some bits over on the weekend, so that was pretty cool. Every little bit of that helps out, so always looking forward to some more of that. But with that, I've got to get out of here, so stick around for the raid. We will see you here. I will throw a game stream up this weekend. We'll do some more Fallout 3. Well, I think we're getting most of the way through the Metro right now. Plus, we just got to Tacoma Park as well, which is going to be fun because it's probably one of the best hidden parts on the Fallout 3 map. Otherwise, we'll be back here on Monday for more contemporary, more news and more headlines. Always looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing more of you guys here. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.